Hello friends, we are reading through the book of Deuteronomy this week, and today we're reading chapter 3. Now you will remember that for this first part of the book, Moses is retelling the story of Israel's experiences with God as they wandered through the wilderness on the way to the promised land. There's one particular part of that story, you can read it in Numbers chapter 20, where God commands Moses to speak to the rock and water will come gushing out. And Moses doesn't speak to the rock, he strikes the rock and water came out. And because of that, God was rather angry with Moses. And he said to Moses, because you've disobeyed me, because you didn't listen to me, you will not be able to enter into the promised land. Now that's a whole rabbit trail that we could go down exploring that story together. But here in chapter 3, Moses recounts that moment. And this is what he says, verse 23. Moses says, I pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have only begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do such works and mighty acts as yours? Please let me go over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, that good hill country. This is Moses explaining that when God said he wasn't able to go into the promised land, Moses began to plead with God and ask him to change his mind. Now I found Moses's language here really encouraging and really powerful. O Lord God, you have only begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. Remember what Moses had seen. Moses had seen God send the plagues on Pharaoh. Moses had seen God turn snakes into staffs and staffs into snakes. Moses had seen the parting of the Red Sea. Moses had seen the pillar of fire by night and the pillar of cloud by day. Moses had seen God provide food in the wilderness for his people. He had seen water come gushing out of rocks. Moses had seen and been used by God to perform wonders and miracles and signs. There's a place in Numbers where it says that Moses spoke with God face to face. Moses had seen God do amazing things that probably most of us could only really dream of seeing. But yet here Moses says that you have only just begun, God. In other words, all that Moses had seen, Moses realized was only just the beginning of all that God wanted to do and would do. You see, that's the thing about God. No matter how much he has done for us, no matter all the wonderful things we have seen him do right in front of our eyes, it's always only just the very beginning. There's a place in the book of Job, chapter 26, where Job describes the wonder of creation and the majesty of the God who made the creation, the universe, the stars, the sea, all of that. And at the end of chapter 26 in Job, it says, but these things are just the outskirts of God's ways. In other words, everything we can see, the stuff that blows our minds, the stars at night, the universe, the sun, the moon, the sea, the vastness of the created world. All of those things, Job says, all it is just the outskirts of God's glory. You see, with God, there's always more to see. And no matter how much your mind has been blown or your heart has been stirred by the goodness and the greatness of God, there is a sense in which we're only ever just at the beginning. Luke in the New Testament, he wrote the book of Luke all about Jesus. And in the book of Luke, he described how Jesus did amazing things, miracles, raising the dead, giving sight to the blind, healing the leper. You know, Jesus did amazing things. And then Luke writes another book, the book of Acts. And at the beginning of Acts, he references the gospel. And he says, in my first book, I wrote about the things that Jesus begun to say and do. In other words, all the amazing things that are recorded for us in the Gospel of Luke. Luke says that was just Jesus' beginning. That was all that he begun to do. And I guess the encouragement for us today is just to have our mind expanded and our vision enlarged and our heart enlarged, to know that there is always more. Even today, there is so much more for us, for you, for me, to discover about this great God. And that's what makes reading the scriptures so exciting, because no matter how many times we've read it, no matter how well we think we know it, no matter how close we think we may be to God, there is a sense in which it's only ever the beginning. And so dive in today, friends. Dive in to the bottomless ocean that is the glory and beauty and majesty of God, and ask him just to reveal a little bit more of who he is to you, because with God there is always more. Bless you. See you tomorrow.